Growing up, my brother and I shared everything from childhood toys to late-night conversations about our hopes and dreams. We were more than just siblings. We were best friends. Our parents always joked that we were inseparable, and for the longest time, I believed that was true. As we got older, our paths diverged. I went off to college, and he stayed in our hometown working at the family business. Still, no matter how busy life became, I always knew that my brother and I would be there for each other. When he announced he was getting married, I couldn't have been happier. After all, this was a huge moment in his life, and I was eager to stand by his side. I pictured myself helping him with wedding plans, sharing laughs with him and his fiancée, and being part of the special day. But as the wedding date drew closer, I started to feel something strange, an emptiness, like I was being slowly left out. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Perhaps it was just the busyness of wedding preparations. But then, as the weeks passed, I realized something that left me stunned. I hadn't received an invitation. It wasn't a mistake. I hadn't been invited. Not a word, not a call, not even a mention. I couldn't understand it. How could my brother, my best friend, not invite me to his wedding? I remember the day I first noticed it, my parents were talking about the wedding plans, and the details seemed to exclude me completely. They were discussing guest lists, the cake, and the venue. But when I tried to interject or show interest, it was as though I wasn't even there. My mother would glance at me awkwardly, her voice trailing off, and my father would change the subject. It wasn't just that they were planning the wedding without me. It felt as if they were erasing me from the conversation altogether. I tried to dismiss it at first. After all, weddings are stressful, right? Maybe they were just preoccupied with the logistics. But as the days went on and I still didn't hear a word from my brother, I started to feel a growing sense of betrayal. I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play here. I had never been excluded from anything before, especially not something as important as his wedding. And yet there I was, left to wonder why. The worst part wasn't just the absence of an invitation. It was the silence that followed. I wanted answers, but I didn't know how to ask. What would I even say? Why didn't you invite me? Seemed so simple, yet it felt impossible to ask. I began to doubt myself, wondering if I had done something wrong. Did I say something? Was there some argument, some falling out that I couldn't remember? I searched my memory for anything that could explain this sudden distance between us, but nothing came to mind. All I knew was that as his wedding day drew near, I was a ghost in my own family's life. I tried to tell myself that maybe I was overthinking it. Weddings can be complicated, and sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the growing suspicion that my exclusion wasn't a mistake. It felt intentional, calculated, and as much as I tried to deny it, I couldn't shake the truth. I wasn't wanted there, and that hurt more than I could express. It was as if I had always been part of the family's narrative. But now, in one simple gesture, or lack thereof, I had been erased. The decision to show up uninvited wasn't an easy one. In fact, it was the hardest choice I had ever faced. I spent days agonizing over it, weighing the consequences and thinking about how the entire situation would play out. My emotions were a storm of confusion, hurt and frustration. I wasn't sure if it was my pride or my desire for closure that pushed me toward this decision, but in the end, something inside me couldn't let go. The hardest part was the internal battle I fought. Every logical part of me screamed, "Stay away, let them have their day. Don't put yourself through the pain of being rejected in front of everyone." But another part of me, the part that refused to back down, kept telling me, "You're his sibling. You belong there. If they can't see that, maybe you need to remind them." I knew that showing up could lead to awkwardness, confrontation, or worse. But I also knew that I needed this moment for myself. I needed to know whether the bond I once had with my brother was really gone or if it could be salvaged. What kept me grounded during this turmoil was the thought of how much we had shared. Growing up, my brother wasn't just a sibling, he was my partner in crime. We spent hours together late into the night, talking about our dreams, our fears, and our futures. We were supposed to be there for each other. That's what family was about, wasn't it? And yet here I was, wondering why I wasn't even given the chance to be there on one of the most important days of his life. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't just angry at him. I was angry at myself for not demanding to be a part of this moment. Maybe I had let myself be swept away by the belief that things would just fall into place. That time would heal the distance between us, but that wasn't going to happen. Not unless I made the choice to act. This wedding was a turning point for both of us. I knew that whatever happened next, it would either heal old wounds or create new ones. But I also knew that I would never get the answer I needed if I didn't show up and confront the situation head on. I still couldn't shake the fear of how people might react. The thought of walking into that venue uninvited and having everyone stare at me was terrifying. The bride, she would be the first to notice me. What would she say? Would she ask me to leave? Would the guests gossip about me in hushed tones, making me feel like the outsider I already felt like? And my brother, would he even acknowledge me? Would he be angry, embarrassed, or relieved to see me? But despite all of these fears, there was a small, unshakable part of me that told me to go. I realized that if I stayed home, I would forever wonder about the what-ifs. What if this was my last chance to patch things up with my brother? What if I never got another opportunity to say how I felt? The hurt I was feeling, as painful as it was, would only continue to haunt me if I didn't take action. The wedding, in a strange way, wasn't just about him. It was about me, too, and my own sense of closure. I spent the night before the wedding agonizing over what to wear, but in the end, I chose something simple, understated yet appropriate. I didn't want to draw too much attention to myself, but I also wanted to make sure I looked like I belonged there, like I wasn't just crashing the event, but rather taking my place in it. As I got ready, I realized something important. This wasn't just about showing up at the wedding, it was about showing up for myself. I had spent so much time wondering why I was excluded, but now I was choosing to show up not for them, but for me to reclaim a part of my identity that had been taken from me. When the day arrived, my heart was racing. I was nervous, but I also felt a sense of resolve I hadn't had before. I wasn't sure what I would find when I stepped through those doors, but I knew that I couldn't back down now. The decision had been made, and I was going to face whatever came my way. I walked out the door ready for whatever might come next. The wedding wasn't just a ceremony for my brother. It was the moment I would confront everything I had been feeling. The exclusion, the confusion, the betrayal, and find a way to move forward. And so, with my heart pounding and my nerves on edge, I set out for the wedding. I wasn't sure what would happen, but I was ready to face it head on. When I arrived at the wedding venue, a flood of emotions hit me all at once. The grandiose beauty of the place only added to my sense of nervousness and the swirling feelings of confusion. Betrayal and hope tugged at me with every step I took toward the entrance. I had never imagined walking into my brother's wedding in this way, as an uninvited guest, unsure of what would unfold. The bright lights, the sound of laughter, and the hustle and bustle of guests mingling all made the situation feel even more surreal. The moment I stepped out of my car, I stood still for a moment, letting the weight of the moment settle. People were arriving in groups, couples stepping out of shiny cars in their elegant attire. It all seemed so perfect, so normal, and yet I felt like an outsider, disconnected from the celebration around me. The reality of what I was about to do sunk in. I was about to confront my brother, the family, and the bride with my presence, uninvited, unwanted, but determined to get answers. I adjusted my tie and straightened my jacket, trying to calm the rising sense of dread in my chest. My heart was racing and my palms were sweaty, but I knew I had to keep going. I had made the choice to be here, and now I had to face the consequences, whatever they may be. The front doors of the venue opened before me, and I was greeted by the familiar faces of family friends and distant relatives who hadn't seen me in years. They looked at me in surprise, and some offered awkward smiles as they tried to place me. I could feel their eyes on me, sizing me up. "What are you doing here?" I could almost hear them thinking. Some of them recognized me, but many seemed to not quite know who I was or why I was there. I felt like a ghost, not quite visible, yet undeniably present. The shock in their faces made it clear that no one had expected me to show up, let alone be here without an invitation. I walked further into the venue, my mind racing. The chatter in the room felt muffled in my ears as I scanned the space. The venue was gorgeous with elegant floral arrangements, sparkling chandeliers, and the scent of fresh roses hanging in the air. But all of this beauty and grandeur felt like a blur. I was no longer focused on the decorations or the wedding itself. My eyes were searching for one thing, and one thing only my brother, and then I saw him. He was standing with his friends near the front, talking animatedly, his face lit up with excitement. For a moment, I stood frozen watching him, wondering if he would even notice me. I hadn't seen him like this in years, so happy, so full of life. The man I once knew so well was now about to marry the woman he loved. But in that moment, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something had changed between us. The connection we once shared felt distant, as though I was standing on the other side of a glass wall, unable to reach him. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was to come. As I walked through the crowd, I made my way toward the area where the guests were gathering, and I tried to blend in, acting as though my presence here was just another part of the celebration. But I couldn't escape the feeling that everyone was watching me, wondering why I was there, why I had shown up uninvited. As I neared the front of the room, I saw my brother's fiancée, the bride, standing with her bridesmaids. She looked stunning in her wedding gown, radiant and glowing. But the moment our eyes met, everything seemed to freeze. She blinked her smile, faltering for just a second as she recognized me. There was a brief pause, and then a look of shock washed over her face. Her body stiffened, and I saw her glance toward my brother, her expression one of confusion and surprise. She didn't know what to do, didn't know how to react. The smile that had once been so warm now felt strained, as if she was trying to hide her discomfort. I felt a pang of guilt, but I knew I couldn't turn back now. It was too late. I had crossed the threshold into this strange, uncomfortable territory, and I needed to confront it head on. At that moment, I finally locked eyes with my brother. His face went pale, his jaw tightening. For a brief second, time seemed to stop. The room around me, which had been filled with laughter and conversation, seemed to fall silent. I could hear the faint sound of my own heartbeat in my ears as I waited for him to make the first move. His eyes widened with disbelief, and I could tell he was struggling to process what was happening. It was as if the very sight of me here, uninvited, was unraveling his entire world. I couldn't read his expression. Was it anger, surprise, shame? I couldn't be sure. All I knew was that my presence had thrown everything off course. The air between us was thick with tension, and every eye in the room seemed to be on us. I took a step forward, and the crowd parted around me as if making space for this unexpected moment. The silence that followed felt deafening, as if everyone were waiting for my brother's reaction. Would he confront me? Would he throw me out? Or would he say nothing, hoping this moment would pass as quickly as it had arrived? But there we stood on opposite sides of an invisible divide, with the weight of years of unspoken feelings hanging between us. And in that moment, as I looked at him, I realized something important. I hadn't just come here to confront him. I had come here to confront myself, to face the truth of why I was excluded, and perhaps even to figure out if there was still a place for me in his life. The moment was surreal. As I stood there face to face with my brother, I could feel the years of distance, of resentment, of hurt and unanswered questions bubbling to the surface. The room felt smaller, suddenly almost suffocating, as if the very air was thick with the weight of everything that had gone unspoken for so long. He didn't say anything at first. His gaze was piercing, but it lacked the warmth I once saw in his eyes. There was a mix of surprise, anger, and disbelief. I could tell he was trying to process what was happening. He hadn't expected me to show up, let alone show up like this, uninvited, standing in front of him as though nothing had changed between us, but everything had changed. The distance was too great now, and neither of us knew how to cross it. For a moment, the world around us seemed to blur. Guests continued to mingle. The music played softly in the background, but in that moment, it was just the two of us. His fiancée was standing just a few feet away, her face pale and tense as she watched the interaction unfold. She was caught in the middle of something that neither of us had prepared for. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The words I'd rehearsed in my head countless times felt inadequate in this moment. What was I supposed to say? Was I supposed to apologize for showing up, or was I supposed to demand an explanation for why I had been excluded? Both options seemed pointless. The hurt ran deeper than any explanation could reach, and yet in that silence, the only thing I could think of was that I needed answers. My brother finally spoke, his voice tight, his words edged with frustration. "What the hell are you doing here?" His tone was harsh, but underneath it I could hear the underlying sadness, the disappointment he hadn't expected me to show up, and it seemed like he didn't know what to do with me now that I was here. I knew this wasn't about me, just crashing the wedding. This was about something far bigger. It was about all the years of estrangement, all the hurt that had never been acknowledged. I came because I need to understand. I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I need to know why you didn't invite me, why you pushed me out of your life. We used to be close, but somewhere along the way that all disappeared. I need to know why. The words hung in the air, and I watched as his face contorted. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, of regret, but it quickly turned into something harder, something I couldn't quite place. He took a step back as if trying to put distance between us, but I couldn't let him. Not this time. Not when so much was at stake. "I didn't push you out," he said, his voice strained. "You were the one who left, remember? You walked away from me. From us, you thought you had better things to do than to be part of this family." His words stung, but they weren't entirely wrong. I had distanced myself after everything that happened, after all the mistakes I made, but I never expected that one mistake would be enough to sever our relationship completely, to exclude me from his life, from his wedding. I shook my head, frustration building inside me. "You never gave me a chance to explain. I was going through my own things, my own struggles, and you just let me go. It was easier for you to let go of me than to try and understand what I was going through. All I wanted was to be there to be your brother, not just when things were easy, but when they were hard too." His jaw clenched, and I could see the fight in his eyes. It wasn't just that. "Okay, you don't know what it's like to be the one who's always waiting, always trying to hold everything together. You were never there when I needed you. You were always off doing your own thing, never once asking how I was doing, how the rest of the family was coping. I had to do everything on my own, and when I finally found someone who made me feel whole again, I couldn't keep holding on to someone who wasn't even there for me." The rawness of his words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much my absence had affected him, how much he had carried on his own, waiting for me to step back in. My heart sank as I realized that my absence, my own selfishness, had hurt him in ways I hadn't understood. "I didn't know," I said quietly, feeling the weight of my own guilt. "I didn't know how much I had let you down. I was so focused on my own stuff that I didn't see how much you were struggling. I should have been there for you. I should have tried harder." His face softened, but just for a moment. "It's not just about that," he replied, his voice quieter now. "It's about trust. You made me feel like I wasn't important enough to be a part of your life, and I couldn't keep waiting for something that wasn't coming. I didn't know if I could ever count on you again." The silence between us stretched out. The pain was palpable now, lingering in the air. My brother's words had cut deep, but they also opened something within me that I hadn't realized was closed off. We had both been hurting, both carrying our own burdens, and instead of coming together, we had drifted farther apart. I'm sorry. I whispered the apology, feeling small and inadequate, but it was all I had to offer in that moment. I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't know how to be there for you, the way you needed me to be. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me for a long time, his expression unreadable. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the desire to forgive, but the hesitation that came from years of pain and disappointment. Finally, he nodded, though his voice was still quiet. Maybe we've both got a lot to figure out, but that doesn't mean it's too late. I'm not saying everything will be okay right now, but maybe we can start over. Maybe we can find our way back to being brothers. I felt a rush of relief, but also a lingering sadness. It wasn't going to be easy, but hearing those words from him was enough. It was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was hope for us. Hope for healing, even if it would take time. But just as I was about to say something more, the bride. My brother's fiancée stepped forward. Her face was tense, but there was a look of understanding in her eyes. She hadn't interrupted our conversation, but now she made her presence known. "We can't keep this going on forever," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "This wedding was supposed to be a fresh start for all of us. Maybe it's time we stop letting the past control us." Her words were a reminder that while we were still in the midst of the confrontation, we couldn't let it define the future. We couldn't stay stuck in the past, no matter how much it hurt. It was time to move forward together as a family. The weight of the past hung in the air between us, thick and heavy like a storm cloud that had been brewing for years. My brother's words had opened up old wounds I didn't know were still there, and as I stood before him, the floodgates of emotion finally began to open. What I had been holding inside for so long, the feelings I had buried deep down in an attempt to protect myself, began to surface raw, painful and uncontrollable. I hadn't been prepared for this. I hadn't known how badly I had needed to confront these feelings until now. I could feel my chest tightening, my breath quickening as I struggled to hold it together. I had spent so many years telling myself that I was fine, convincing myself that everything was okay, that I didn't need anyone. I'd convinced myself that the distance between my brother and me didn't matter, that the loss of our connection was just another thing to move past. But here in this moment, the truth was undeniable. I had missed him. I had missed the bond we once shared. And now, standing in front of him, all I could feel was the ache of that absence. For so long I had been angry at him for not reaching out, for pushing me away, for making me feel as though I didn't belong in his life. But as the words left my mouth, I realized that the anger I'd been holding on to was nothing more than a defense mechanism, a way to protect myself from the vulnerability of feeling abandoned. But the truth was, I had abandoned him too. I had allowed the distance between us to grow. I had let the silence speak louder than any attempt at reconciliation. And in doing so, I had pushed him further away. My brother was standing there, his eyes not just filled with frustration, but also with an aching vulnerability of his own. He had been holding on to his own hurt, his own sense of betrayal. And as I looked at him, I saw the weight of all the years of unspoken words and missed opportunities. We were both just two people lost in our own pain, unable to find our way back to each other. I didn't know it was that bad. I said, my voice shaking slightly. I hadn't realized how much my absence had affected him, how much he had carried on his own. His anger wasn't just about me not being there for him. It was about the years of him feeling alone, abandoned by the one person who should have had his back. His eyes softened for just a moment, a crack in his tough exterior. But then it was gone, replaced by the defensive walls he had spent years building up. "You don't get it," he said, his voice quiet, almost broken. "You weren't there for me when I needed you the most. You were gone. And every time I reached out, it was like you didn't care, like I wasn't worth fighting for." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I could feel the tears stinging my eyes. I had thought I was the one who had been abandoned, but in that moment, I realized that we had both been doing the same thing to each other. We had both been fighting our own battles in isolation, never once reaching out to one another for support. And now, as we stood here with the wedding unfolding around us, I could feel the weight of all that missed opportunity crashing down on me. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my emotions. This was harder than I had imagined. It was harder than I could have ever prepared for. But in the depth of my brother's pain, I felt something else, a longing, a desire for healing, for forgiveness, for the chance to rebuild what we had lost. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I didn't know how much I've let you down. But I'm here now. I want to make this right. I want to try. I don't want to lose you again." He didn't say anything at first, and for a moment I thought I had said too much, that I had pushed too hard. But then, after a long silence, he took a step toward me. His shoulders seemed to relax, the tension easing just a little. "I don't know if it's that simple," he said, his voice raw. "I don't know if you can just come back and everything will be okay. It's not that easy. It's not just about me. It's about trust. It's about rebuilding something that's been broken for so long. I don't know if I can ever forget how hurt I felt when you left." I nodded, understanding his hesitation. How could I expect everything to be fixed so quickly? How could I think that my apology would erase all the years of pain of feeling abandoned? I didn't have the answers, and I couldn't undo the hurt I had caused. But I could try. I could try to rebuild. I could try to show him in every way possible that I wasn't the same person who had walked away all those years ago. "Just give me a chance," I said, my voice soft but sincere. "I know I can't fix everything, but I can try, and I'll keep trying as long as it takes." For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just the exhaustion of carrying the burden of all these emotions for so long. But whatever it was, it felt like a crack in the walls he had built around himself. And in that moment, I knew that no matter how difficult it would be, we could find a way back to each other. Slowly, painfully, but surely. As the moments passed, the noise of the wedding, the laughter, the chatter, the music faded into the background. It no longer mattered. What mattered was the conversation unfolding between us, the rawness of the emotions we were finally allowing to surface. For the first time in years, it felt like we were really seeing each other again, no longer hiding behind our anger or our pride. But just as we began to reach a fragile understanding, the bride. My brother's fiancée stepped forward, her expression soft but serious. She didn't interrupt, but her presence was undeniable. It was clear that this conversation was too important to let the wedding go on without acknowledging it. We couldn't pretend that everything was fine when the emotional unraveling was so palpable, when the wounds were so fresh. The tension was thick, but in that moment I knew that we were all at a crossroads and that this confrontation, painful as it was necessary for all of us to heal. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. What began as a confrontation laden with years of unspoken hurt was now a fragile moment of potential healing. I could feel the tension between my brother and me slowly starting to loosen, but the weight of what had been left unsaid still hung in the air. Neither of us knew exactly what the next steps were, but for the first time in years, we both seemed willing to figure it out together. It was difficult to put into words exactly what was happening. A reconciliation between siblings doesn't happen overnight, especially not after so many years of miscommunication, disappointment, and misunderstandings. But as I looked at my brother, I saw something that I hadn't seen in so long, the possibility of a relationship. Not the kind of relationship where everything is perfect, where every wound is instantly healed, but the kind where we were willing to try again to take those small steps toward rebuilding what we had lost. After the intense confrontation, we stood in silence for a moment, trying to absorb everything that had just happened. His fiancée, though still quiet, had moved to the side, giving us space to work through our emotions. She knew this was something we had to do on our own, even if it meant facing the uncomfortable truths that had been buried for so long. "I didn't expect this." My brother finally said, his voice quieter than it had been before. "I didn't expect you to show up like this. I didn't expect any of this to happen." He paused, looking down at the floor for a moment before meeting my eyes. "But I'm glad you did. I guess I've been holding on to my anger for so long I didn't stop to think about how much I wanted you back in my life. It just felt easier to push you away." I swallowed the sincerity in his words, hitting me harder than I had anticipated. "I get it," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I've been doing the same thing. I've been so angry at you for not being there when I needed you. But I never stopped to think that you were hurting, too. I was too focused on my own pain to see yours." He nodded, his jaw tightening as if he were fighting back his own emotions. "I guess we both messed up, huh?" "We both did," I replied, my words softer now. "But that doesn't mean it's too late. We can start over. We don't have to fix everything at once, but we can try. I can try." The silence between us wasn't as heavy as it had been earlier. It wasn't perfect, but there was a sense of understanding growing between us, a realization that we didn't need to carry all the anger and hurt anymore. We didn't need to pretend that everything was fine, but we could at least stop pretending that the years apart hadn't meant something they had, and we couldn't undo them, but we could choose to move forward. "I don't know what that looks like," my brother said slowly. "I don't know what it'll be like trying to get back to where we were, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Maybe we can start by just being there for each other. Maybe we can start with the small things." I smiled, the tension in my shoulders starting to ease. "That sounds good to me. Small steps." As we talked, I could feel the walls that had been built between us slowly starting to crumble. It wasn't an immediate fix, and I knew that there would be bumps in the road along the way. But for the first time, there was a sense of possibility, a belief that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild our relationship. It wasn't going to be easy, but we were both willing to try. And for the first time in years, that was enough. The rest of the wedding continued on around us, but it felt like we had entered a new chapter, not just for us as siblings, but for our family as a whole. It was clear that the road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges. My brother's fiancée, though supportive, was still processing everything that had just transpired, and I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She had just witnessed something raw and vulnerable between us, and it was clear that the dynamics between all of us were about to change. But that change was necessary. "I know this is awkward," I said, turning to her. "I didn't mean to make things uncomfortable. I just needed to have that conversation with him." She smiled faintly, but it was clear she had a lot on her mind. "It's okay," she said softly. I think you both needed to have it. I can't pretend to know everything that's been between you two, but I think there's a lot of love there, even if it's been buried for a while. And if you're both willing to try, then that's all that matters." Her words struck a chord with me. Love had been buried, yes, but it hadn't disappeared. The love that we once shared as siblings was still there, hidden beneath the layers of hurt and misunderstanding. And maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward rediscovering it. The evening continued, but the energy had changed. My brother and I, though still navigating the complexities of our conversation, had found a place of understanding. There was no guarantee that things would be perfect from here on out, no magic fix that would erase the past, but we had taken the first step, and that was enough. As the night wore on, I realized reconciliation wasn't about pretending that the past didn't matter. It was about acknowledging it, understanding it, and then choosing to move forward together. It was about being willing to let go of the past in order to make space for something new. And though I didn't know what the future held for us, I knew that this moment, this resolution, was the beginning of something much more important than a wedding or a family dinner. It was the beginning of a journey toward healing, toward rebuilding, and toward finding our way back to each other.